They thought canceling my invitation was just a small thing, until I canceled my little brother's entire wedding with one phone call. My name is Connor Mitchell, and for 23 years I've been the invisible foundation holding up my family. When our parents died in a car accident when I was 17 and Jake was just 8, I didn't have a choice. While other kids my age were planning college parties, I was planning how to keep my little brother fed, clothed, and in school. I dropped out of high school 3 months before graduation. The guidance counselor tried to talk me out of it, said I was throwing my life away. But what she didn't understand was that I wasn't throwing my life away. I was giving it to someone who mattered more than any diploma ever could. Jake needed me, and I wasn't going to let him end up in foster care, bouncing between strangers who might not care if he ate dinner or did his homework. Those early years were brutal. I worked 3 jobs: dishwasher at a diner from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., construction from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m., and weekend shifts at a grocery store stocking shelves. I'd come home exhausted, help Jake with his homework, make sure he had clean clothes for school, and fall asleep at the kitchen table going over bills. Every month was a gamble. Would we make rent? Could I afford his school supplies? When he outgrew his shoes, I'd wear mine with holes in the soles for another 6 months just to buy him new ones. But Jake never knew about the struggles. To him, Big Brother Connor just magically made everything work. When he wanted to join Little League, the registration fee appeared. When his class took a field trip to the Science Museum, somehow the money was there. When he needed a tuxedo for 8th grade graduation, Connor made it happen. I made sure his childhood looked as normal as possible, even if mine had ended the night our parents died. The construction job taught me more than just how to swing a hammer. I watched contractors, learned how they operated, saw the margins they worked with. When I turned 21, I used the small inheritance from our parents' life insurance, money I'd been saving for Jake's college fund, to buy a beat-up food truck. Jake thought I was crazy. "Why are you wasting money on that piece of junk?" he asked, wrinkling his nose at the rust and grease stains. I didn't tell him it was his college money I was risking. I couldn't. Instead, I worked 16-hour days, serving lunch to construction crews and office workers, learning the food service business from the ground up. Within 2 years, I had 3 trucks. Within 5 years, I had my first restaurant. By the time Jake graduated high school, I owned a small catering company that was quietly building a reputation for quality and reliability. Jake never questioned where the money for his college tuition came from. When he got accepted to State University, I told him our parents had left more insurance money than I'd initially thought. He believed me because he wanted to believe me, because it was easier than thinking about his big brother sacrificing everything for his education. He studied business, joined a fraternity, made friends, dated girls. He got to be a normal college kid because I made sure he never had to worry about money. While he was rushing sororities and pledging fraternities, I was rushing between catering gigs and planning my next business move. The catering company led to buying a small event venue when the owner couldn't make his mortgage payments. The venue led to partnerships with local hotels when they needed overflow catering services. One deal led to another. One opportunity opened doors to 3 more. By Jake's senior year, I owned 4 restaurants, 2 event venues, and had majority stakes in 3 hotels in our city. But I never told him. I kept driving the same 10-year-old pickup truck, kept living in the same modest house where we'd grown up, kept my success quiet. Jake thought his big brother was just a small-time caterer who'd done okay for himself. He had no idea that Connor Mitchell Hospitality Group was becoming one of the most successful privately owned restaurant and venue companies in the state. When Jake graduated summa cum laude with his business degree, I was the proudest big brother in the world. He'd earned a scholarship to grad school but turned it down to start his own marketing consultancy. I quietly steered some clients his way, business owners I'd met through my restaurants who needed marketing help. Jake thought he was just naturally talented at networking. He was talented, but he also had an invisible hand helping him succeed, just like he'd had his entire life. 3 months ago, Jake called me with the biggest news of his life. He was engaged to Madison Pierce, daughter of the Pierce family who owned the largest real estate development company in the region. I'd heard of them, old money, country club members, the kind of family who summered in the Hamptons and wintered in Aspen. Jake was over the moon, gushing about how perfect Madison was, how her family had welcomed him with open arms, how they were planning the wedding of the century. "Connor, you're going to love them," he said, his voice bubbling with excitement. "They're having an engagement party next month at their country club. Madison's dad wants to meet you. He keeps saying how grateful he is that I turned out so well despite our difficult circumstances. I think he's really impressed that you managed to raise me right after Mom and Dad died." I felt a familiar knot in my stomach, the same one I'd carried for years whenever Jake talked about our difficult circumstances, like they were ancient history, like they hadn't shaped every decision I'd made since I was 17. But I smiled and told him how happy I was for him, because that's what big brothers do. They swallow their own feelings and celebrate their little brother's joy. The engagement party was my first real glimpse into Madison's world. The country club was the kind of place I catered events for, but had never attended as a guest. Manicured lawns, crystal chandeliers, waiters in white gloves serving champagne that cost more per bottle than I used to make in a week. Jake introduced me to Madison's parents, Robert and Patricia Pierce, and I could see them trying to hide their assessment of me behind polite smiles. "So you're the brother who raised Jake," Patricia said, her voice carrying that particular tone wealthy people use when they're trying to sound impressed but can't quite hide their pity. "What a tremendous sacrifice you made. He's told us how you worked multiple jobs to support him. Such dedication." "Jake's a special kid," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "He deserved every opportunity." "And what do you do now?" Robert asked, swirling his scotch. "Jake mentioned you're in the restaurant business?" "Catering mostly, some event planning." I didn't mention that I'd catered 3 events at this very country club in the past year, including their daughter's college graduation party. I recognized the head waiter. He'd worked for me during busy seasons. Throughout the evening, I watched Jake navigate this world with an ease that made my chest tight with pride, and something else I couldn't quite name. He belonged here in a way I never could, and maybe never wanted to. He talked about wine vintages and ski trips to Vail, about business connections and investment opportunities. This was the life I'd wanted for him, the life my sacrifices had made possible. So why did it feel like I was watching him drift away from everything we'd built together? The wedding planning started immediately. Madison wanted a spring wedding, something elegant and sophisticated that would properly represent both families. When Jake told me they were looking at venues, I casually mentioned a few places I knew were exceptional. I even offered to help with the catering arrangements, thinking I could contribute something meaningful to his special day while saving them money. That's when I learned about the budget. $200,000 for one day. "Don't worry about the cost, Connor," Jake said when he saw my expression. "Madison's family is handling most of it. They want to do this right, you know. This isn't just a wedding, it's a merger of 2 successful families. The guest list alone is going to be 300 people. Business associates, family friends, people Dad needs to maintain relationships with." "Dad?" I asked, confused. "Mr. Pierce. He told me to call him Dad. Isn't that great? I finally have a father figure again." Jake's smile was so genuine, so happy, that I forced myself to smile back, even though his words felt like a knife between my ribs. I went home that night and sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd helped Jake with 20 years of homework, and tried to understand why I felt so empty. This was what I'd wanted. Jake was successful, happy, loved, accepted into a family that could give him things I never could. I should have been celebrating. Instead, I found myself opening my laptop and looking at wedding venues. Not just any venues, the absolute best ones in the city. The kind of places that book up 2 years in advance, that charge $20,000 just for the rental. I made some calls, pulled some strings, and within a week, I'd secured the grand ballroom at the Morrison Hotel for Jake's wedding date. It was the most prestigious venue in the city, the place where senators and CEOs held their family celebrations. Then I called the Pierce family's wedding planner, a woman named Vivian Cross who specialized in high-end society weddings. I told her I wanted to upgrade Jake and Madison's catering package, that I had connections in the industry and could get them something truly spectacular. I didn't tell her that Connor Mitchell Hospitality Group owned both the venue and the catering company she'd be working with. I just told her to book the premium package and that I'd handle the deposit, $50,000. I transferred it that afternoon, the same way I'd transferred Jake's college tuition payments, the same way I'd quietly handled 100 other expenses over the years. Just another investment in my little brother's happiness, another sacrifice that would remain invisible. The venue was booked, the catering arranged, hotel blocks reserved for out-of-town guests. Jake was ecstatic when Vivian told him about the upgrades that had mysteriously appeared. Madison's parents were impressed by the caliber of vendors suddenly available to them. Everyone assumed the Pierce family's connections had made it possible. Everyone except Jake, who cornered me a week later with a suspicious look in his eyes. "Connor, did you have anything to do with the Morrison Hotel? Vivian said someone with industry connections made some calls, got us bumped to the top of their waiting list. That place books 2 years out, and suddenly we're getting married there in 4 months?" I shrugged, kept my voice casual. "I know some people in catering. Maybe I put in a good word." "The deposit alone was $50,000, Jake pressed. "The Pierce family didn't pay that much. Someone else did." "Maybe they got a deal," I said, turning back to the invoices I'd been reviewing. "You know how these places work. One client recommends another. Prices get adjusted." Jake studied my face for a long moment, then smiled and shook his head. "You're impossible, you know that? Even now, you're still trying to take care of me." "That's what big brothers do," I said, and meant it. What I didn't tell him was that taking care of him had become my identity. For 23 years, Connor Mitchell's purpose in life had been making sure Jake Mitchell had everything he needed to succeed. It was the only role I knew how to play, the only way I knew how to love him. 2 weeks before the wedding, Vivian called me with final details. The flowers were arranged, the menu finalized, the music selected. 300 guests would be celebrating Jake and Madison's new life together in the most beautiful venue in the city, with food prepared by award-winning chefs and service that would make it a night to remember. "It's going to be absolutely perfect," Vivian assured me. "Mr. and Mrs. Pierce are so pleased with how everything has come together. They keep commenting on the level of sophistication, how this really represents their family's standards." Their family's standards. I hung up the phone and tried to ignore the growing knot in my stomach that had been there for weeks. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on what. Jake was happy. Madison seemed lovely. The Pierce family had been nothing but polite to me. The wedding was going to be everything they'd dreamed of. So why did I feel like I was planning my own funeral? The answer came 3 days before the wedding, when my phone rang at 2:47 in the afternoon. Vivian Cross, her voice tight with what sounded like embarrassment mixed with professional obligation. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm calling with a rather delicate situation regarding your brother's wedding. I've been asked to relay a message from the Pierce family." My hand tightened on the phone. "What kind of message?" "Well, it seems there's been a change regarding the guest list. The Pierce family has decided they need to adjust the arrangements for immediate family members. They're asking that your invitation be withdrawn." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Withdrawn?" "They've expressed that they want to keep the ceremony more intimate, limited to the couple's closest family and friends. They feel that with such a large guest list already, they need to make some difficult cuts." I was quiet for so long that Vivian cleared her throat nervously. "However," she continued, "they're hoping you'll understand that the deposits and arrangements you've made can remain in place. They recognize the financial contribution you've made and don't want to cause any complications with the vendors." I understood. They wanted my money, but they didn't want me. The brother who'd raised the groom, who'd sacrificed everything to make Jake's success possible, wasn't good enough to witness his wedding to their daughter. But the $50,000 I'd quietly contributed? That was perfectly acceptable. "I see," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "And Jake knows about this decision?" "The Pierce family felt it would be best if the message came through me, to avoid any awkwardness. They're hoping you'll understand that these decisions are never easy, but sometimes necessary to maintain the appropriate tone for the celebration." Appropriate tone. There it was, the truth behind 23 years of polite smiles and careful words. I wasn't appropriate for their tone, the man who'd worked 3 jobs to keep his little brother in school, who'd built a business empire while Jake earned his degree, who'd quietly arranged for the most exclusive wedding venue in the city. I wasn't appropriate. "Mr. Mitchell, are you still there?" "I'm here," I said, just processing the information. "I hope you understand how difficult this is. The Pierce family really does appreciate everything you've done for Jake. They just feel that given the circumstances—" "What circumstances would those be, Vivian?" She was quiet for a moment. "Well, the social dynamics involved in merging two families from different backgrounds. They want to ensure the wedding reflects the level of sophistication that both families represent." Both families. Not my family. Jake's new family, and Madison's old money family. The family that could afford a $200,000 wedding without breaking a sweat, unlike the brother who'd had to mortgage his future to pay for college tuition. "I understand completely," I told her, and I did. I understood that 23 years of sacrifice meant nothing when it came to country club politics. I understood that love without a pedigree wasn't sophisticated enough for the Pierce family standards. I understood that Jake had found a new family, one that came with trust funds instead of second mortgages. "But I do have one small request," I continued, my voice still calm. "Of course, Mr. Mitchell. What can I do?" "Cancel the entire wedding." Silence. Then a nervous laugh. "I'm sorry. What did you say?" "Cancel the wedding, the venue, the catering, the hotel blocks. All of it." "Mr. Mitchell, I don't think you understand. I can't just cancel a wedding 3 days before the ceremony. There are 300 guests, deposits that can't be refunded, contracts that are binding." "Actually, Vivian, I think you're the one who doesn't understand. I'm not asking you to cancel the wedding. I'm telling you to cancel it." "Sir, with all due respect, you're not the groom. You don't have the authority to—" "No, I'm not the groom, but I own the venue. I own the catering company, and I own the hotel chain where you've booked rooms for the out-of-town guests." The silence on the other end of the phone stretched so long I wondered if the call had dropped. What?" Vivian's voice was barely a whisper. "The Morrison Hotel? That's mine. Connor Mitchell Hospitality Group bought it 18 months ago. Pierce Premium Catering? I own that too. We just operate under different names for different market segments. The Grandview Hotel, where you've got room blocks for Madison's family from Boston? That's part of my chain as well." I could hear Vivian's breathing getting shallow. "Mr. Mitchell, surely we can work something out. This is just a misunderstanding." "Oh, it's not a misunderstanding at all. The Pierce family was very clear about their standards and their definition of appropriate family members. They want to keep my money, but exclude my presence. That seems like a very clear understanding to me. But sir, the contracts—" "Check the fine print, Vivian. Connor Mitchell Hospitality Group reserves the right to cancel any event with 72 hours notice if the client fails to meet behavioral standards outlined in Section 12 of our service agreement. Discriminating against family members of the wedding party based on socioeconomic status definitely qualifies." I could hear papers rustling, probably Vivian frantically searching through contracts she'd never actually read thoroughly. "Mr. Mitchell, please. There has to be a way to resolve this. The bride's family has already flown in from 3 different states. The flowers alone cost $15,000. The wedding dress cost more than most people's cars. You can't just—" "I can, and I am. As of this moment, the Morrison Hotel Ballroom is no longer available for the Pierce Mitchell wedding. Pierce Premium Catering no longer has staff available for Saturday's event. The Grandview Hotel has a sudden plumbing emergency that requires all guests to be relocated immediately." "This is insane!" Vivian's professional composure finally cracked. "You can't destroy an entire wedding because of a guest list disagreement." "I'm not destroying anything, Vivian. I'm simply applying the same standards the Pierce family applied to me. They decided I wasn't appropriate for their celebration. I've decided their celebration isn't appropriate for my venues." My phone started ringing before I'd even finished my conversation with Vivian. Jake's name flashed on the screen, and I could practically feel his panic through the device. I let it ring 3 times before answering, giving myself a moment to prepare for what was coming. "Connor, what the hell is going on?" Jake's voice was strained, higher pitched than usual. "Vivian just called Madison crying, saying something about the venue being canceled. Please tell me this is some kind of mistake. I leaned back in my office chair, looking out the window at the city skyline that included 3 buildings I owned. No mistake, Jake. The wedding's been canceled. Canceled? You can't cancel my wedding. Connor, this is insane. Do you have any idea how many people are flying in? Madison's grandmother is 87 years old and took her first flight in 30 years to be here. Her cousins from Ireland landed this morning. I'm sure they'll have a lovely visit anyway, I said calmly. The city has plenty of tourist attractions. This isn't a joke, Jake's voice cracked. Connor, please. I know you're upset about the invitation thing, but we can work that out. Madison's parents just got carried away with the planning. They didn't mean to exclude you. Really? Because Vivian was very specific about maintaining an appropriate tone and managing social dynamics between families from different backgrounds. That sounded pretty intentional to me. There was a long pause. When Jake spoke again, his voice was quieter, more careful. Look, I'll talk to them. We'll fix this. You're my brother. Of course you should be at my wedding. Just, please don't destroy everything we've planned. We? I asked. Who's we, Jake? What do you mean? You keep saying we planned this wedding. But you didn't plan anything. Your future in-laws planned it. Their wedding planner planned it. Their money paid for most of it. And when it came time to decide who was family enough to attend, they planned that too. That's not fair. What's not fair is me finding out 3 days before your wedding that I'm not welcome at the ceremony because I don't meet their standards for sophistication. What's not fair is them asking to keep my $50,000 deposit while excluding me from the event it paid for. The silence stretched so long I thought he might have hung up. Finally, Jake's voice came through, barely above a whisper. You paid $50,000? I paid for everything, Jake. The venue, the catering, the hotel rooms, all of it. Why didn't you tell me? Because you never asked. In 23 years, you've never once asked how the money appeared when you needed it. College tuition, your car, your apartment deposit, the seed money for your business. You just assumed it would be there, the same way you assumed I'd understand being excluded from your wedding. I could hear voices in the background, Madison's voice, rising in panic, and what sounded like her father shouting. The reality of the situation was sinking in on their end. Connor, please. Jake's voice was desperate now. I had no idea you were paying for everything. If you'd known what? You would have stood up to your new family? You would have insisted that your brother who raised you deserved a seat at your wedding? Yes, of course I would have. But you didn't know because you never asked. And when they told you I wasn't invited, you didn't question it. You let them send their wedding planner to deliver the news like I was some vendor who could be dismissed. The background noise was getting louder. I could hear Madison crying, her mother's sharp voice cutting through the chaos. Someone was making frantic phone calls. Connor, you don't understand the pressure I'm under here. Madison's family, they have expectations. Her father controls half the real estate development in this city. He could make or break my business with one phone call. And there it is, I said, feeling something cold settle in my chest. The real reason you're marrying into this family. It's not just about love, is it? It's about connections, opportunities, climbing the social ladder. That's not true. Isn't it? When did you stop being Jake Mitchell and become someone who needs his future father-in-law's approval more than his actual brother's presence? Jake was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice sounded younger, more like the 8-year-old boy I'd promised to take care of. I just wanted to fit in somewhere, Connor. Do you know what it's like being the guy who grew up poor, whose parents died, who got raised by his teenage brother? I wanted to be part of a real family again. The words hit harder than I'd expected. And what have we been for the last 23 years? That's not what I meant. No, I think that's exactly what you meant. You found a real family, one with money and status and country club memberships, one that doesn't remind you of government assistance and food stamps and wearing the same clothes 2 years in a row. Connor, stop. You're being unfair. Am I? Because I'm starting to understand why they didn't want me at the wedding. I'm a reminder of where you came from, and that doesn't fit the image you're trying to project. The phone went quiet, except for the chaos in the background. I could hear Robert Pierce's voice now, demanding to know how this could have happened, threatening to sue someone. A door slammed, and Jake's voice became clearer. "I'm outside now," he said, "away from everyone else. Connor, please, tell me what I need to do to fix this." "You want to fix this? Tell me something, Jake. When the Pierce family decided I wasn't good enough for their daughter's wedding, what did you say?" Another long pause. I didn't know they were going to do that." "That's not what I asked. When Vivian called you and said they were excluding me, what was your response?" "She didn't call me. She just told me it was handled." "And you didn't ask what handled meant? You didn't wonder why your brother suddenly wasn't on the guest list anymore? I thought maybe you'd decided not to come. You've never been comfortable at their family events? You always seem like you'd rather be anywhere else." "Because I'm not part of their family, Jake. I never will be. But I thought I was still part of yours." I could hear him starting to cry, something I hadn't heard since he was 12 and broke his arm falling off his bike. "You are part of my family. You're the only real family I have." "Then why didn't you fight for me?" The question hung in the air between us. It was the question that had been eating at me since Vivian's call, the one that made my chest feel hollow and tight at the same time. "I don't know," Jake whispered finally. "I don't know why I didn't fight for you. I should have. I should have told them that if my brother wasn't welcome, then neither was I." "But you didn't." "No, I didn't." I closed my eyes, feeling 23 years of love and sacrifice and quiet resentment crystallizing into something harder and clearer. "And that tells me everything I need to know about where I stand in your life now. Connor, please don't do this. Don't throw away our relationship because I made a mistake." "I'm not throwing anything away, Jake. I'm just finally acknowledging what's been true for a while now. You've outgrown the life I gave you. You've outgrown me." "That's not true." "It is, and maybe that's okay. Maybe that means I did my job right. I raised you to be successful, to fit into worlds I could never access. Mission accomplished." I could hear cars honking in the background, the sounds of a city moving forward while Jake's world fell apart. "What about the wedding? What about Madison? What about all the guests who are already here?" "That's not my problem anymore. You wanted to be part of the Pierce family? Figure out how the Pierce family handles crisis management." "Connor, you can't mean that. You can't just walk away from me." But that was exactly what I was doing, and we both knew it. For the first time in 23 years, I was putting my own needs first. I was setting a boundary, drawing a line in the sand and saying this far, no further. "I love you, Jake. I always will, but I'm done being the invisible foundation of your life. I'm done sacrificing my dignity so you can chase acceptance from people who see me as an embarrassment." "Where do I go from here?" he asked, and for a moment he sounded like that scared 8-year-old again. "Forward," I said. "You go forward. You figure out how to solve your own problems, how to make your own way, how to choose between what's easy and what's right. You grow up." I hung up before he could respond, before the sound of his tears could break my resolve. My phone immediately started ringing again, but I turned it off and sat in the silence of my office, looking out at a city where I owned more than my little brother would ever know. 3 hours later, my assistant knocked on my door. "Mr. Mitchell? There are some people here to see you. They say it's urgent." I knew who it would be before she opened the door. Robert Pierce walked in like he owned the building, his wife Patricia close behind, both of them radiating the kind of controlled fury that came from never having their authority questioned. Madison followed, her wedding dress shopping bag clutched in her hands like a security blanket, her eyes red from crying. "Mr. Mitchell," Robert's voice was cold, clipped. "I think there's been a significant misunderstanding that we need to clear up immediately." I gestured to the chairs across from my desk. "Please, sit down." "I prefer to stand," Robert said. "This shouldn't take long. You've made some sort of mistake regarding my daughter's wedding arrangements. I'm here to resolve it before this situation gets any more out of hand." I leaned back in my chair, studying his face. He had the kind of confidence that came from never hearing the word no, from always being the most powerful person in any room he entered. Today was going to be educational for him. "What kind of mistake do you think I've made, Mr. Pierce?" You've canceled vendor contracts that you have no authority to cancel. You're not the client. You're not even invited to the wedding. You have no legal standing to interfere with arrangements made by my family. Actually, I have every legal standing. I'm the owner of the businesses you contracted with. Patricia Pierce spoke for the first time, her voice sharp with disbelief. That's impossible. We worked with Vivian Cross, one of the most exclusive wedding planners in the city. She would never book vendors who weren't appropriate for our level of clientele. Vivian books the best vendors available, I agreed. She just didn't realize that the scruffy caterer she met at your engagement party owned most of the premium venues in the city. Madison finally found her voice. This is insane. You're destroying my wedding because of some petty family drama with Jake? I'm not destroying anything, I said calmly. I'm simply choosing not to provide services to clients who discriminate against my family. Discriminate? Robert's face was turning red. We made a reasonable decision about guest list management. Wedding planning requires difficult choices. Let me make sure I understand your reasonable decision, I said, pulling out a legal pad and pen. You decided that the brother who raised your future son-in-law wasn't sophisticated enough to attend your daughter's wedding, but his money was sophisticated enough to pay for the venue, the catering, and the hotel accommodations. We weren't aware of your financial contribution, Patricia said stiffly. Would it have changed your decision if you had been? The three of them exchanged glances. Robert cleared his throat. Our concern was maintaining the appropriate atmosphere for a formal celebration. Mixed social backgrounds can sometimes create uncomfortable dynamics. Mixed social backgrounds, I repeated, writing it down. You mean having poor people at your party. That's not what I said. It's exactly what you said, just with more syllables. I set down my pen and looked directly at Madison. Tell me something. What do you know about Jake's background? Really know, not just the sanitized version he's probably shared. Madison shifted uncomfortably. I know his parents died when he was young and Connor raised him. I know it was difficult. Difficult? I nodded. Did you know that when Jake was 9, we lived on government assistance for 6 months? Did you know that I dropped out of high school to work 3 jobs so he could stay in school? Did you know that there were weeks when I ate 1 meal a day so he could have breakfast and lunch? Connor, please, Madison started, but I held up a hand. Did you know that the reason Jake is so comfortable in your world, so polished and educated and sophisticated, is because I spent 23 years making sure he never had to experience the poverty that shaped me? That every opportunity he's had, every door that's opened for him, was built on my back? The room was silent. Patricia Pierce was staring at her hands, her composure finally cracking slightly. That's the mixed social background your family found inappropriate, I continued. Not Jake. He's perfectly acceptable because he's successfully hidden his origins. But me? I'm the visible reminder that your future son-in-law came from nothing, and that makes everyone uncomfortable. Robert Pierce straightened his shoulders, trying to regain control of the conversation. Mr. Mitchell, I understand you're upset. Perhaps we can reach some kind of accommodation. If having you present at the wedding is important to Jake, I'm sure we can find a way to include you. Include me? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to include me now, after making it clear that I'm an embarrassment to your family? We never said you were an embarrassment, Madison protested. Your actions said it. Your wedding planner said it. Your parents said it when they decided my money was welcome, but my presence wasn't. Robert pulled out his checkbook. Look, let's be practical about this. You've made your point. What's it going to cost to resolve this situation? I stared at him, genuinely amazed. You think this is about money? Everything is about money, Mr. Mitchell. Name your price. You want to know my price? I stood up, walked around my desk until I was standing directly in front of him. My price is watching Jake learn what it means to solve his own problems. My price is seeing him choose between his integrity and his social climbing. My price is finding out whether the man I raised has any backbone left, or if you've successfully bought it all. This is ridiculous, Patricia snapped. You're punishing our daughter for a guest list decision that wasn't even hers. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just not enabling this family's belief that money entitles you to treat people as disposable. Madison started crying again, quiet tears that made her look younger than her 26 years. "Please," she whispered. "I love Jake. I want to marry him. This is supposed to be the happiest day of my life." For the first time since they'd walked into my office, I felt a flicker of sympathy. Madison hadn't created this situation. She'd just been raised in a world where other people's feelings were secondary to social appearances. "Then maybe," I said gently, "you should think about what kind of marriage you're starting. One where your husband allows his family to be excluded to avoid uncomfortable conversations. One where keeping up appearances matters more than standing up for the people who love you." I walked back to my desk and sat down. "The wedding is canceled. The contracts are void. If you want to have a ceremony, you'll need to find new vendors, new venues, new accommodations. And you'll need to do it in 3 days." Robert Pierce's composure finally snapped. "This is extortion. We'll sue you. We'll destroy your business. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with?" "Do you?" I asked quietly. "Because I'm dealing with people who think money and social status give them the right to treat others as less than human. And I've decided I don't want to do business with people like that." They left after more threats, more demands, more desperate attempts to buy their way out of consequences. Madison was the last to go, turning back at the door with a look of genuine confusion. "I don't understand," she said. "Why would you hurt Jake like this? If you love him, why would you destroy his wedding?" "Because," I said, "sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone face the consequences of their choices. Jake chose your family over his own. Now he gets to live with that choice." The door closed behind them, and I was alone with the silence and the weight of what I'd done. My phone, which I'd turned back on, was buzzing constantly with messages from Jake, from vendors, from panicked guests who'd heard rumors about the wedding being canceled. I ignored them all. For the first time in 23 years, Jake's problems were not my problems to solve. For the first time since I was 17 years old, I was free to think about what Connor Mitchell wanted instead of what Jake Mitchell needed. It should have felt liberating. Instead, it felt like I'd just amputated part of myself. But sometimes amputation is the only way to save the rest of the body from infection. Jake would figure it out. He was smart, resourceful, and desperate. He'd find a way to salvage some kind of ceremony, or he'd postpone until he could afford to pay for his own wedding, or he'd elope and start over. Whatever happened, he'd do it without his big brother's invisible hand guiding every step. Maybe that's what growing up really meant, learning to stand on your own, even when the ground underneath you shifts. Maybe it was time for both of us to find out who we were when we weren't defined by our roles as caretaker and protected. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "I know you'll never forgive me, but I want you to know that everything good about me came from you. I'm sorry I forgot that." I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it. Forgiveness wasn't the issue. Love wasn't the issue. The issue was respect and boundaries and refusing to be taken for granted anymore. Jake would be fine. He'd land on his feet because that's what I'd taught him to do. And maybe eventually he'd understand that the greatest gift I could give him was the chance to save himself.